Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Femininity series. So some of the Exoticals over on the Patreon, you guys wanted me to talk about femininity and my theories on feminine privilege. So get your tea and your popcorn, get out your beauty materials, get out your nail polish and your face mask, go on your walk because I want to discuss this. I can talk about this topic for hours. And you guys seem to like it when I talk about my personal experiences with privileges. You guys love the privilege discussion. So I've talked about thin privilege when it comes to the exoticals. I've talked about pretty privilege. And now I want to talk about feminine privilege. And the reason I call it feminine privilege is because I feel like when it comes to femininity in general, obviously you're already feminine, you're a woman, so it's not really that's not what I'm talking about. When I discuss feminine privilege, I'm talking about being a woman who benefits from the positive stereotypes associated with femininity, and I'm talking about receiving benefits and social status because you fit those stereotypes. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because in my last video, the one about Nara Smith, I talked about being whimsical and how, as exoticals, one of our benefits and social advantages is that we have permission to be whimsical. That's a part of our stereotypes. And when I talk about being whimsical, I'm thinking of like a princess, think of like the Little Mermaid, think of like an elf or a fairy or some sort of creature. Those are all whimsical creatures. Think about like even a Barbie doll. You're something out of a person's imagination. You are a fantasy girl. And I'm not talking about in terms of just men, because I think one of the mistakes that a lot of content creators make is whenever they discuss feminine privilege, it's always based around men. They'll be like, oh, you're feminine because this guy wants you. Oh, well, you're feminine because this guy provides for you. And I just feel like all that stuff, that's more of a side effect. Men are a side effect, they are not the main thing when it comes to your femininity. And I feel like as an exotical, you can really cultivate your femininity. You can cultivate that whimsical nature about yourself. And so I want to talk about being a feminine woman versus being a masculine Dustishas and kind of like what the differences are, what the side effects are. Okay, so if somebody is a masculine Dustishas, this type of woman, she is used to struggle. She's used to struggling. She's used to always having to defend herself. She has to defend her phenotype, her complexion, her background. She has to defend her ancestors because she feels like she's responsible for all 8 billion of the dark-skinned black community. She's got the weight of the world on her shoulders. A lot of women who are kind of like masculine or they get the masculine stereotype, part of that actually comes from behavior. I actually don't think that there's a such thing as having a masculine phenotype. That's not what it is. It's not based on skin tone or race. It's really based on how a person carries themselves. And I think that some women, they were raised in a masculine culture. So, for example, if her mom was playing both roles, let's say her mom played her mother and father, or maybe she was not in a safe space to be feminine. So maybe she was raised like she was forced to be a tomboy, even though she didn't want to be a tomboy. Um, Maybe she was shamed when it came to femininity. Have you ever noticed? Usually it's the masculine women who make fun of your femininity. They make fun of you. They'll be like, oh, why are you wearing nail polish to work? Why are you wearing lip gloss to work? And it's like, are you kidding me? These are just some of the basic staples. This is literally like toys. You know, these are literally like toys and playthings. I'm playing around with my femininity. What do you mean I can't wear lip gloss? You're telling me that you're offended because I'm wearing a Dollar Tree lip gloss? You're telling me that you are such a slave to masculinity. And by the way, if that's not male centered, I don't know what is. There is nothing more male centered than a masculine woman who's trying to act like what she thinks a man should act like. You know, she's trying to play the role of what she thinks a man should play, and then she shames femininity. No, I feel like as a human being, you should try to have balance. So, you know, you want to have balance between your quote unquote masculine traits and your feminine traits. And by the way, this is all just my theories. I love talking about this. By the way, if you're new here, this channel is kind of like a think tank. So none of my videos are drawing conclusions. None of this stuff is like facts. This is more so I'm just thinking out loud, and then the exoticals can think alongside me and you guys can comment. But it's like there's nothing more male centered than a woman who she tries to compete with men, she tries to act like a guy, she tries to mold herself into a man so she can attract more men. Have you ever met a girl like that? That's the cool girl. That's the cool girl stereotype. She tries to act like a man, dress like a man, be a tomboy even though that's not who she really is. She pretends that she likes sports. She pretends to watch football. She pretends that she's into weightlifting. She pretends that she's into anime or whatever. She's doing all this stuff so she can hopefully attract a man. Meanwhile, you, as the pretty feminine exotical, you are being authentic to your version of femininity. You get to dress how you want. So, guess what? If you want to wear lip gloss, you can wear a lip gloss and you don't care what anyone thinks because that is a part of being whimsical. That's a part of being carefree. A woman who is hyper masculine, she's the opposite of carefree. She's always worried about protecting and providing for others. This is where you get that mule stereotype. You know how some people say, "Oh, I feel like I'm a mule." They'll be like, "Oh, women are acting like mules." Okay, well, what do they mean? They're talking about a work mule. They're talking about a donkey. It's basically this animal that carries a heavy load. But have you ever noticed that some women complain about being treated like animals and they feel like they're carrying a heavy emotional load? So that's a part of a woman constantly being in her masculine. She does not have feminine privilege. She has a masculine lifestyle. She's got a masculine spirit. She's got a masculine mindset. That's the only way she's used to operating. Have you ever heard the girls online talk about like manifestation and all that? So the girl who's masculine, the way that she tries to manifest her goals is by just working harder. Just slave away harder. Okay, maybe if I cook and clean for him more, then he'll stop cheating. Maybe if I just do more in the bedroom, then he'll finally accept me. Maybe if I just glue this lace front to my hair and then rip out my actual hair. Maybe if I just neglect myself, maybe if I neglect my natural hair and then just glue on a wig, then I'll be more accepted. That's actually more of a masculine behavior because women with feminine privilege value their bodies and they value their feminine signals. So when I think about my hair, your hair is a signal of your health. It can be used as a feminine status symbol. So whether your hair is short or long, generally speaking, women who are feminine, we want our hair to be healthy, just like the rest of our body. So it's like, you can't convince me that you have feminine privilege and you don't even care about your health. Your hair is literally a part of your health. If somebody is not washing their hair for like 8 months because it's braided up under a lace front, that is actually nasty. That's like a lack of hygiene. I view having unhealthy hair as an extension of bad hygiene. And which gender is known for their bad hygiene? That's men. That's a masculine. That's toxic masculine behavior. Bad hygiene is toxic masculine behavior. So you've got all these women who are jealous of women who have healthy hair. They're jealous of women whose hair is healthy and they meet all of their feminine goals. Oh, by the way, that's another trauma. Have you ever noticed that some women have femininity trauma? So an example of that would be she's never had long hair before. She's never grown her hair out and been successful. She's never achieved any of her feminine goals. So when I think about my feminine goals, knowing how to do makeup, knowing how to grow my hair out, having some sort of skincare routine, knowing how to fade acne scars, those are just the basic parts of being a girl, right? Well, there are some women where they never have achieved their feminine goal. Imagine being 40 years old, 50 years old, and you have never experienced having long hair that's mid back length. You've never experienced that in your life. Imagine yearning and longing for long, healthy hair, and you're so bad at your feminine hobbies. You feel so unsafe being feminine to the point where you're ashamed to go to the store and buy the hair oils. You feel like you don't have time to do your DIY hair mask. And so you're going decades of your life without ever experiencing that type of femininity. And that's why I changed my hair goal to hip length. So at first the goal was tailbone length, but I think I want my hair growth goal to be hip length because I've never had hip length hair. And so I feel like that's a really fun feminine goal. So by the way, it doesn't have to be hair growth. For you, it could be something else. It could be weight loss. It could be like learning how to do a certain manicure, some sort of expression of beauty and femininity. But think about it. There are women out there where they have never successfully grown their hair past armpit length. Every single time it gets to armpit length, it breaks off. She has never figured out the key on how to grow her own hair. She hasn't studied herself enough to figure out what works for her. A part of feminine privilege actually comes from studying yourself. You cannot attain feminine privilege without taking accountability for your own flaws. And some women hate themselves so much that they're not willing to study themselves. They're not studying how their hair actually behaves underneath the wigs. They don't care. They're neglecting it. So I feel like a lot of the women who don't have feminine privilege, it really comes from self-neglect. It comes from self-neglect. They're too busy muling for other people. They're too busy competing with men. They're too busy trying to impress men by taking on toxic masculine traits. And also, I see some women who say things like, oh, well, I don't need to grow my hair out. I don't need to lose weight. I don't need to paint my nails. And it's like, okay, well, who told you that though? Are you just repeating what men have said? Are you just repeating the talking points of broke men? Because some women have internalized a broke, dusty mindset. They had a boyfriend he couldn't afford them getting their nails done. He couldn't afford the hair products so she can like take care of her hair. He couldn't afford for her to have free time to even do her little wash day and all that. So she has internalized that misogyny. She has internalized that broke, dusty mindset of, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to do anything. I don't have time to pamper myself. Think about the women that you know who are feminine and whimsical. Usually, those women, they have time to pamper themselves. And the reason I'm using long hair as an example is because I feel like you cannot grow your hair long without dedicating some sort of time to taking care of your hair. You're either dedicating time or money. And so a lot of women, they've got these broken off edges, they've got a broken off nape, their hair is dry as fuck, their hair literally looks like straw, their hair's fried. A lot of women look like that because they didn't have the time to study how they can fix their hair cuticles. They're not detail oriented. And I think that when it comes to hair, a lot of women, they use the term texturism. They're like, oh, she's only pretty because of texturism. And it's like, no, actually, a lot of times women are pretty because of feminine privilege overall. So they could have any hair texture. There are women who have long hair that's relaxed, or it's type 4, or it's an afro or whatever. And they have a sense of feminine privilege because the fact that they even have that long, healthy, luscious hair, that is actually a sign that they have spent time pampering themselves. She spent the time to pamper herself. She spent the time to do the hair tea or to steam her hair or whatever. All the women that people look up to from hundreds of years ago, they will make all this content. They'll be like, oh, the native women, they used to do this. Oh, well, women in those tribes in Africa, they have all these traditions. Or the women in China, they do all this stuff with their hair. They have all of these tribal things that they do. And, that's the epitome of being feminine. And it's like, okay, so you value your ancestors, right? You do all this talking about your ancestors, but then you don't even take on the feminine routines of your own ancestors. If you hate yourself, just say it. And this is a part of why I feel like some women, they secretly do hate themselves, or they just don't care about themselves. They feel like it won't make a difference. They think feminine privilege is like worthless, and that's fine. You know what? Because guess what? That's more feminine privilege for me. So, you don't have feminine privilege. Get off this video, go watch videos about how to be masculine if that works for you. But I feel like femininity is learning how to express yourself as a woman and then figuring out your unique feminine identity. So this is not just based on beauty, but I've talked about this before. So some questions you can ask yourself are like, okay, what's my internalized beauty standard? What creatures do I associate with femininity? So a panda bear just popped up in my head. A Barbie doll just popped up in my head. The cottagecore aesthetic just randomly popped up in my head. You know that picnic, you know the picnic blankets, like the print that just popped up in my head. So some ways that you can identify your unique femininity is when I say that word, feminine, what just popped up in your head? Who popped up? Did your friend pop up? Did your mother pop up? Because my mom actually pops up. Like the women in my family pop up. And I think about how a lot of the women in my family, like my cousins, my sisters, my mom, my aunties, pretty much all the women in my family, they have a very unique hair care routine. Some of them put their hair in twists. So not like a twist out, but kind of like just the regular twists that are not flat to your head. Some of my family members, they used to do twists and then, they just let their tailbone length hair shine. And, it's kind of like in these loose mermaid waves because they slept with their hair in twists. Then I have another cousin, she has type 4 hair. She would sleep with her hair in like a very loose, low ponytail. And then when she would wake up, she would wear her hair in a low bun. And that was her version of like being cute and feminine. So I feel like everybody has their own internalized standard of femininity. And it's not necessarily based on colorism, texturism, or featureism. So I feel like a lot of women, they hide behind the isms. And it's like, no, you just haven't embraced your version of femininity and you just don't have feminine privilege. It has nothing to do with your hair type. How are you going to blame a hair type for your entire life being fucked up? No, you're making an excuse. 4C hair doesn't have the power to destroy your life. It's literally just hair. That's just protein fibers coming out of your head. So you're telling me that you are a Dustishas simply because you have these hair follicles? So you're telling me that your hair follicles were able to control your entire life and now your whole life is dusty because your hair is 4C? But I feel like another aspect of feminine privilege is being allowed to be carefree and kind of like being free spirited, or at least in my case, I feel like that's what it is. But I want to talk about some of the different types of feminine privilege. Okay, so you've already got the beauty privilege. So these are the women who pamper themselves. So they have the time to make their little hair masks. They've got all these fun feminine hobbies. Hopefully, when you were a little girl, maybe you had an older sister or cousins who taught you some feminine hobbies. So these could be things that increase your beauty. It could be like some sort of hygiene hobby. So, for example, like me using the example of the women in my family, like twisting their hair or braiding their hair, and then wearing it out, wearing it curly the next day. It's so funny because I see in the black community, they talk about twist outs and stuff. Women of other backgrounds and women with like type 3 and below, women with other hair textures have been doing all kinds of like heatless curls forever. Like that's not anything new. And I feel like some women, it's almost as if they're lagging behind in terms of feminine strategies. But you can think about some of the things that your mom or your grandma or your aunties used to do. Did your grandma have some special herbs? Like maybe she made a special type of herbal tea and it helped you to get rid of period cramps? Or maybe you have a family member that has a special recipe and it always gives you energy. It always helps you. Maybe you have a special diet in your family where it's like it always helps you to lose weight. I know that there are some cultures actually where a lot of them are vegetarian. I know that there are some black and Indian exoticals where their Indian side, maybe the Indian side was vegetarian. So they're learning about the actual health benefits that can be used to like help their bodies to look better and feel better. But I feel like beauty, that contributes to feminine privilege, but also I think there's something called approachability privilege. So, you know how some people have the resting bitch face? Like a masculine woman or a woman who's in a masculine environment, she's more likely to have the resting bitch face. Why? Well, it's because she has to defend herself. So, I think that that is an unfortunate thing if you are an exotical and maybe you have been around a lot of basic betties. Maybe you've been around a lot of dustishas. Maybe you had women attacking you and fighting you a lot and so you learned to have kind of this resting bitch face. Like when I used to live, well, I can't say where I used to live, but when I used to live in a rougher area, when I was in my early 20s, I did have the resting bitch face because I was tired of getting catcalled. I was tired of getting essayed on the street, so it came from trauma. Resting B face comes from trauma. That woman has subconsciously learned to put on a certain facial expression to tell people not to approach her. And I'm not shaming you. It's a safety mechanism. You weren't emotionally safe enough to be able to have a soft facial expression. So you have to walk around almost with like a frown on your face. So I've noticed that in more masculine cultures, women who are in toxic masculine environments, they are more likely to take on toxic masculine traits, such as the resting B face, or those women who look you up and down, they're sizing you up. That's more of a masculine trait. They're sizing you up. Why? Well, because there's a chance that they may have to fight you. There's a chance that they may have to go toe to toe with you. Okay, so that's a sign of being in a more masculine type of environment. It's like there's this harsh competition. It's every woman for herself, every man for himself. There's no sense of community. And so that's why sometimes you'll see these masculine women, that's their natural way of operating. They are socially masculine. Okay, so I'm not talking about their phenotypes or their race. I'm just saying some women, they are socially, they act more masculine. Sizing people up? Why would you be sizing people up? Or even like, have you ever had a woman bump into you on purpose, or she steps on your toes on purpose, or like maybe you're in a crowded hall and she just like brushes past you? Out of all the people that she could have bumped into, she purposely bumps into you. She doesn't say, excuse me. It's basically like toxic masculine culture because she's using intimidation tactics. She naturally is using intimidation tactics. That's more of a masculine social strategy. Let me look at this girl up and down. Let me use these intimidation and manipulation tactics to make her feel scared and afraid. So it's almost like how in the animal kingdom, it's almost like growling. You know how you see animals, they start growling at you or hissing at you. They're kind of like trying to tell you, hey, back off. That's more of like a masculine trait, like, oh, I need to defend my territory. This is my territory. I'm here to defend my territory. Masculine. So I think that a lot of girls, they don't realize that part of why they don't have feminine privilege is because their social, for lack of better words, their social etiquette, it gives off kind of this masculine energy. So you know how some people say, oh, this person, they don't look approachable, or have you ever been around this feminine woman where she's so pretty, she's like very soft and kind and sweet, and people are just drawn to her? That's an example of feminine privilege because being approachable, everybody always makes it male centered. They're like, oh, you have to be approachable to men. That's not what I'm talking about here. Well, I mean, it does affect how you deal with men as well, but it's like when I say this type of woman is approachable, what I mean is she has a soft facial expression. She feels safe smiling. She feels confident in her smile. She feels safe smiling when she meets new people. Have you ever met somebody and then it's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, and they don't even smile or anything? That's actually kind of weird to me. It's like they never smile at all. They're always frowning. Maybe they're always looking down at the ground. So that's kind of like a beta male behavior. That reminds me of a beta male behavior, or somebody who doesn't have a lot of confidence and self esteem. And by the way, I'm not talking about people who are socially disabled or they have like severe autism and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who they cannot smile. They literally have never been in an environment where they've been able to smile. They didn't have anything to smile about. And I remember that was one of my cultural differences because when I went to college, I remember there were girls at my college who thought that I was weird because I would smile. So because I would smile and just walk up to new girls and be like, "Oh, hey, what's your name?" And then I would like introduce myself. I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, like we live on the same floor, so I just wanted to say hi and like introduce myself." I literally have been around girls where they think that's weird. They think it's weird because why would you introduce yourself to a stranger? Why would you smile at a stranger? From their cultural background, strangers are always dangerous. Always. So you never talk to a girl, even a girl who lives in the dorm room at your college. You can't speak to anybody. You can't speak to anyone you don't know. You can't smile at people because smiling makes you a target. There are some cultures where they view smiling as a form of weakness. Any sort of openness, being socially open, they view that as a form of weakness. Meanwhile, that actually contributes to your feminine privilege. Being socially open, having a kind facial expression on, or if people tell you you're approachable, when someone says that you're approachable or they feel safe talking to you, what they're saying is you have the opposite of a resting bitch face. Like in my case, I have the exact opposite of the resting bitch face. I have the type of face where you want to walk up to me. People always walk up to me. They'll be like, "Oh, hey, can you help me find this?" Or like even at the grocery store, they'll be like, "Oh, hey, can you help me to get these Cheerios off the aisle?" Because I'm tall. So sometimes little old ladies in the store, especially if I'm wearing my platform heels, little old ladies, they'll be like, "Excuse me, can you help me to get this cereal?" So then I'll like help them or whatever. It's actually kind of cute. Um, but I feel like that is a form of feminine privilege because some women are able to naturally come across as being warm. You come across as warm. You come across as easy to talk to. People are stereotyping you as being kind. They stereotype you as being sweet. That's actually a form of feminine privilege because guess what? That also means you can get away with more if necessary because you're already stereotyped as the sweet, kind, pretty girl. So nobody views you as aggressive. Being stereotyped as aggressive, that's more of a masculine. That's associated with toxic masculinity. And the opposite of that, feminine privilege, is being associated with being approachable and sweet and kind and warm. And I think part of that comes from your actual facial expression. And by the way, side note, the women who do their makeup, like if she has these Angry Birds eyebrows and then she's wearing too much lip liner. I see a lot of women doing the lip combo and they kind of overline their lips. Sometimes if they make their lips turn downward, then you got the angry eyebrows. Well, now you just carved out your face to look like you're constantly frowning. So now you sabotaged yourself using makeup. You actually made yourself look worse with the makeup. You made yourself look angry 24/7 because you put on too much eyebrow pencil. And I think that's something else that people don't realize too. But having kind of this approachable, kind, sweet aura, I feel like that contributes to your feminine privilege. Okay, another thing is class. Class or luxury signaling. This is one that you can't really control, if I'm being honest. You can't really control where you come from. You can't really control like your accent. Well, I mean, I guess you can train yourself, but like when it comes to your background, unfortunately, there are certain backgrounds and cultures that people associate with being masculine or kind of like being a fighter. So, for example, anytime I'm in the office, have you ever like met somebody at work and they're just so loud? And I'm not talking about being loud and ghetto. I'm just saying in general. Like you could be in the library and then maybe you just met this person and they're like, "Hi, how are you?" And then they're like shouting. They randomly speak louder than everybody else in the entire building. They're constantly over talking people. And it's not that they're doing it on purpose. It's more so like that's a part of their background, but that actually diminishes part of their feminine privilege because that tells me that you are not used to being heard. You're not used to being seen. You're not used to people listening to you and valuing what you have to say. So that's why you're shouting. You know how they have that stereotype? The loudest one in the room is the weakest one in the room. So I think that sometimes the way a person speaks or like the volume at which they speak, if they're talking louder than everyone else 24/7, I feel like that's actually that's a sign of like not knowing how to pick up on social cues because especially if you're in a quiet environment, why are you yelling and shouting? Why are you talking hella loud? Like if you're on the phone, why are you talking hella loud arguing with your boyfriend on the phone in the middle of a restaurant? Like that's not really the norm. You're not going to be associated with having feminine privilege because again, that's not being soft. You know how some people say, "Oh, she's soft." Okay, that's not an insult, ma'am. Calling me soft is not an insult at all. That's actually a compliment. Thank you. I love being a soft princess. But I feel like there are some backgrounds, some family backgrounds where they weren't heard. Maybe they come from a family where everybody interrupts each other. Oh, that's another one too. That diminishes feminine privilege because again, you're doing that thing where you're competing with the person. You're competing so you can speak. You're competing to be heard. You're competing to have the last word. You're competing to be the loudest at the table. So, this hyper competitive spirit that some women have, all it does is it causes them to be stereotyped as masculine. That's it. It's not because of your skin. It's literally because of your personality. You are doing all of these toxic masculine traits where men are known for those things. And I've even seen some cultures where they're so male-centered that they pedestalize books like Think Like a Man. It's like, well, why would I want to think like a man, act like a man, be a man? I'm not a man. So that has nothing to do with me. Why? Have you ever noticed that some women online, they only listen to male content creators or they only read books by male authors? That's actually another thing that I believe can diminish feminine privilege because all you have in your head are male voices. Men are socialized differently than women. So, sizing people up when you're walking next to them and, threatening people, also bragging about being heavier, valuing being heavy, that's more of a male, that's a masculine thing. That's a part of masculine culture. In male culture, they value gaining weight or whatever and like, putting on some weight, being heavier than normal. But I've noticed that there are some women where they value that, like they want to be heavier. And then they hide behind terms like thick. And it's like, that's not thick, that's like actually obesity. So at least the men, when they're talking about being heavier, at least they're talking about putting on muscle. You're not even putting on muscle. And so I feel like that's another part of kind of this masculine Dustishas mindset. You know how some guys they kind of enter into like a dick swinging contest where it's like who has the bigger D. You know how some guys have that toxic masculine behavior. I feel like women do that with their asses. Well, I have a bigger ass. Well, I have bigger boobs. Well, I'm thicker than you. Well, my thighs are thicker than yours. Okay, you're using your body. You're literally throwing your weight around. You're acting like a fucking heavyweight wrestling champion. Why would I want to throw my weight around and brag about being heavier and fatter and having a fatter ass? And again, that's male centered. Oh, well, I have thick thighs and a fat ass. Okay, which gender seems to value that more? That's the male gender. That's a male centered type of thing. You don't see me bragging and saying, "Oh, I have a little booty which men like more." No, because that would be a male centered talking point. So I feel like sometimes women don't realize that being extremely male centered also can lead to kind of these toxic masculine behaviors and it can take away from their feminine privilege. And I'm glad that the Exoticals never fell for that bait. And I think it's because as Exoticals, we get stereotyped as children with being more feminine for various reasons. Some people are self hating, and so they stereotype mixed people with being more feminine or whatever. For some of you guys, you had pretty privilege from the time you were a child, and so maybe your parents put you in pageants, they put you in cheerleading. That's another thing too. Growing up in a background where you were involved in a lot of stereotypically feminine activities, that actually can help cultivate your feminine privilege. Because, for example, let's say you're doing ballet or something. Okay, well, you learn about grace and posture and like how to strengthen your body without being drenched in sweat. So you're also learning like how to move gracefully. And then in ballet, you sometimes dance with a partner and you kind of like get connected to your body without having to use the male gaze. A lot of women don't know how to connect with their own body unless it's with a man having his dick inside of her. That's the only way that she can actually feel her body and connect with her body and feel something. She doesn't know how to feel feminine in her body without involving a man. And that's another thing that bothers me about a lot of the femininity content on YouTube. I do kind of feel like the femininity train has passed because, ever since the Exoticals started talking about decentering men, ever since the decentering men sector came online, it kind of killed the femininity movement because it exposed how male centered a lot of the feminine talking points are. So I think another mistake is believing that the only way you can feel feminine in your body is by involving a man. That's false. Little girls can feel feminine in their body by doing ballet, they can do cheerleading, they can do dance, they can do so many different things to like feel different bodily sensations without it having to be sexualized. So a lot of women, they view their femininity based on how smegsy am I in the eyes of men? how many men want to sleep with me. That decides how feminine I am. Oh, well, did a man pick me for marriage? Did he pick me to be his girlfriend? Did he pick me? Okay, then that means I'm feminine. No. You can be feminine without being in a relationship. You can have feminine privilege without having to give your body to a random guy. But going back to my list here, okay, so I talked about how approachability, that's a part of feminine privilege. Also the halo effect. So that is a real thing. A lot of ugly people, they dislike pretty privileged people, and so they give you a pretty punishment. But guess what? If you are a pretty woman and you go to a place where beauty is celebrated, you're going to have the halo effect. So that is where somebody stereotypes you as being like very attractive and polished. They assume they project all of these positive qualities onto you because of how pretty you are. You literally look like a princess. You look like a Barbie. You look like a cheerleader. Those things are associated with like happiness. Think about it. Cheerleaders, they smile, they put on pom poms, they hold the pom poms and they're encouraging, they're literally cheering for other people. So think about the stereotypes of a cheerleader, if that's the sort of femininity you want to express. Think about the stereotypes of a princess. Princesses, they're very kind. Usually in the movies you see them like being kind to animals, or like they really get along with animals and stuff. She's very into nature. A lot of princesses, they also have hidden talents. Maybe they can sing. Maybe they can they read a lot of books, kind of like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. So, whatever positive stereotypes you want, you can actually tap in to different feminine aesthetics, and then you can see how that works for you. And then you've got kind of like this sexy bombshell type of femininity. So Love Island, that's a good example where they kind of promote like this bombshell type of thing. And then you see these model-esque girls where they've got their makeup all done, their hair is sleek or it's long. They've got like a sexy bikini on. They're showing off their bodies and stuff. They're like expressing themselves. They actually are. I would say that the bombshell type of femininity, so that is more male adjacent or like male gaze adjacent. So that's another thing. You've got the female gaze type of femininity. So think of like princesses. These are all the women that little girls look up to, kind of like the princesses and stuff, the Barbies. That's more like female gaze. Then you've got this male gaze femininity, the bombshell, the baddie is another one, kind of like the IG baddie, the social media baddie. That's more of a male gaze version of femininity. So one's not better than the other. Like I think that you should tap into all of them depending on what your goals are. You guys know me. I promote a fluid standard of beauty. That's just my standard of beauty, though. I don't ever want to like try to force you to copy me because this is not an advice channel. You should trust your intuition. But it's like there are different levels of sexiness or like seduction that you can use as a part of your femininity. So I've noticed that in Black culture, they seem to promote more of the male-centered femininity, the bombshell, the baddie, kind of like the vixen. That's more of like what they promote. I think part of that could be based on coming from broken homes. Like maybe those women didn't grow up with any sort of male gaze. This is according to their own talking points. They didn't grow up with a male gaze. They didn't have a male gaze that was non sexual, like a father figure, for example. And so, as adult women, they seek to kind of heal that wound by getting the male gaze, kind of having that experience with the male gaze. So, that's a whole other thing. Maybe I'll talk about that on Patreon because that's a little bit too sensitive for YouTube. So, I do feel like different types of beauty, it kind of intersects with feminine privilege, but I don't think that you have to meet a certain beauty standard in order to be perceived as feminine. Um, but I think another thing that contributes to Exotical's femininity privilege is class and luxury signaling. A lot of people, they view us as a form of status. Most people want to date us or create us. They want to date a biracial man, or they want to date a Mexican man. Maybe you are part Mexican. You are already part Indian. You're part white. You're part whatever. So a lot of people, they want to date in your community, or they want to date within your culture. Maybe they want to date somebody black and you're black. People want to date in your culture. They want to create children that have your phenotype, or they want people to assume that one day they're going to create a child that looks like you. Also, your collective image as an exotical is phenomenal. I mean, we've got so much representation in the media, on social media, on Instagram, on YouTube. We've got representation that's very diverse. You've got the ratchet exoticals, you got the classy exoticals, you got the trad wives and all that. So whatever flavor you like, there is somebody out there that exudes that type of femininity. So I think that your collective image also contributes to your feminine privilege. And I think that ever since the exotical sector came about on YouTube, this has actually helped our collective image. It really has. It has. Because now you see less people talking shit about the exoticals. We get to speak up for ourselves. We get to tell our own stories. A lot of MLS women are more proud of their beauty now, ever since the exotical sector came out. We are more proud of our beauty than ever before. A lot of us are embracing our skin tones, or, embracing being multiracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural, speaking several languages, being light skinned, being dark, having curly hair, having keen features, having light eyes, having freckles, whatever features you have. I feel like the exotical space has really helped with that. And so I think that you can actually play into your collective image. So I do this all the time. Sometimes I want to look like how Beyonce looks. Sometimes I want to look like how Aaliyah looks. Sometimes I want to look like how Sade looks. So I might take inspiration from my favorite feminine icon. Like Olivia Dean is one of my favorites right now. I love Olivia Dean. So I will take inspiration from another woman of my collective image, and then I can use that to my advantage in everyday life. You know how some people say, oh, pretty privilege doesn't trickle down? Yes, it does. It actually does trickle down if you look like that person. So if you already have Halle Berry's phenotype, if you already have Justine Skye's phenotype, you have Ryan Destiny's phenotype naturally, you can absolutely draw on their feminine style if you want to. And you can play into that. Some people like playing into their celebrity look-alike, or, if people tell you you look like an ethereal creature, like an elf or a mermaid. For me, I get the mermaid comment all the time. And it's probably because for a lot of my 20s, well, actually, still to this day, some of my favorite colors, I love teal. I love the color teal. I love green, so people associate that with mermaids, or even like that light purple. So think of like Ariel from Little Mermaid. She literally wears those colors. So if you are being associated with an ethereal creature, if you naturally have ears that kind of poke out, almost like an elf or something, maybe you have like kind of this heart-shaped face with these ears that stick out, you might just naturally look like a fairy princess elf. So maybe that aesthetic goes really well. Maybe you have this regal, elegant Native American type of look about you, kind of like Pocahontas or something like that. So maybe you've got this long, silky, straight hair. Your hair's long, it's like wavy or something like that. You have this rich cocoa skin tone or something. You can use all of that to contribute to a different type of feminine privilege. So the way that I do it is like, depending on where I'm going, I will literally decide ahead of time, what kind of feminine privilege do I want today? So I told you guys about how I went to the book club a few months ago. So that was like this past winter. And I knew when I was going to the book club that I wanted to make female friends. And so you know what? I literally dressed like Elle Woods. Like, Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. I literally had a pink hat on. I had a pink fur coat on. I had a pink sweater on. I had pink boots on. And as soon as I walked in, this girl immediately was like, oh my gosh, I love your outfit. And it has happened to me several times where I've gone to a book club or an event, and because of the way that I did my feminine privilege that day, because of how I chose to dress, or, I chose to play into a certain character, the way that I view like fashion, for example, I view fashion as kind of like this fun costume, not like a cringy costume, nothing where it's making me look uglier, but always like it's a fun character or a fun alter ego that I can tap into. So that day I was Elle Woods, that was my aesthetic. So I had this big ass dramatic pink fur coat on. And by the way, I love dramatic fur coats. So it's happened several times where I'll walk into an event and there's another girl there who has a similar aesthetic. So she'll have on her fur coat. And like the girl that I made friends with, I immediately made a new friend. She is now one of my closest friends. And this is all based on an outfit. It's because both of us love dramatic fur coats. Both of us love pink. She has kind of like this, she has like a gossip girl type of aesthetic. And so that kind of fit well with my Elle Woods type of aesthetic that I was doing that day. So it's so cute. Like part of what we do together as far as our activities, we have gone thrifting together. We like to take pictures together because we naturally dress similar. So that's an example of feminine privilege. And that's feminine privilege that's decentered from men because I was able to make more friends. I was able to create a healthy friendship based on something as simple as the way I express my femininity. So I think that your feminine expression, it's a form of magnetism. That's an example of me being magnetic. I literally walked into a room and I was able to magnetize a genuine, healthy female friendship, all because of something as simple as, hey, I want to do the Elle Woods aesthetic today. And that's the type of feminine privilege I want today. And I think that some women, I think women with inferiority complexes, they feel like femininity is a monolith. The only way to be feminine is no, you got to be sexy. You got to show your ass. You have to have on tight jeans or tight a booty skirt or like booty shorts or whatever. No, like that day, I was not dressed for the male gaze. The silhouette of that outfit was terrible for the male gaze because I had a big ass fur coat on. You can't see any shape with that. It literally made me look bigger, technically, because it's a very big and bulky fur coat. So, no, I was not showing any curves. It definitely didn't make my butt look bigger or curvier. It made my ass look small and tiny. I looked like a fucking stick. It made me look like a marshmallow with stick toothpick legs. That's how the fur coat made me look in terms of shape. So that was not me dressing for the male gaze. So I think that a part of why some women have insecurities about their femininity is because they only know how to be feminine for a man. They only know how to be feminine at the club or whatever, or like to turn a man on. And that's a very base level of feminine. I feel like that you're not even scratching the surface. That's very shallow. Like you're diminishing your femininity to your pussy and like how a man wants you, or like how many men want you, and how many men want to sleep with you and stuff. No, my femininity is not just based on the lens of the male gaze. I can express my femininity through movie characters, for example, dressing like Elle Woods. I have expressed my femininity before through my racial and ethnic background. So you guys see a lot of women, how they wear the head wraps, or they wear like a long traditional Mexican skirt. They wear a traditional Mexican outfit. They're wearing a Native American piece of jewelry or something. So I've done stuff like that, expressing my femininity through my racial and ethnic background, kind of flaunting that. I've expressed my femininity through my hobbies. So, for example, wearing a t shirt that says tennis, or it says pickleball, or, whatever my hobby is that I'm doing at the moment. Like I've worn my ballet leotard. So it's kind of like, it's a leotard, but it still looks like a jumper. So think of like a jumper that has shorts and a t-shirt and it's like connected. That's basically how it looked, but it's technically like a ballet leotard. So I've worn stuff like that. So it's a feminine expression based on my feminine hobbies. I've worn t-shirts before that say like Zumba, or like they literally have clothes for everything, for like every hobby. So there are a lot of different ways that women can attain feminine privilege. Because, if I'm wearing a Zumba shirt, now when I walk down the street or if I go into a coffee shop, somebody else there, they might do Zumba. And then they might be like, oh, hey, oh my God, it's nice to meet you. Oh, what gym do you go to? Oh, I do Zumba as well. And then next thing you know, you're magnetizing friendships, you're magnetizing opportunities just based on your feminine expression. I told you guys the story about how when I was taking a Bollywood class, it was like a Bollywood dance class, because I love doing dance classes as my workout. That's a fun feminine workout for me. It makes me feel very feminine and sexy, like moving my body. So again, that's another decentered, it's decentered from men. I get to move my body in a sensual way, but there's no man there. It's just me and the class and the music. So I didn't have to bounce on somebody's dick in order to feel feminine. But I remember I was taking the Bollywood class. I was taking the class at the YMCA. They had this Indian lady there and she was teaching Bollywood. And she thought I was so good at the Bollywood dancing that she actually asked me if I wanted to be a teacher. So now that's an example of magnetizing a money opportunity. So I didn't take it. I don't want to be a dance teacher or anything, but still, somebody out there, maybe you do want to be a dance teacher. Maybe you're a young girl in college and you need a side gig. Maybe you need a part time job. Okay, well, guess what? My feminine expression literally was so magnetic that something as simple as Bollywood dancing, it caused a feminine Indian woman who was a teacher of the Bollywood to ask me if I wanted to also be a teacher of that class because she saw how passionate I was about it, how fun, how much fun I was having. I would show up to every class. I loved like doing the moves and stuff. Like I was always in sync with her, like when we were doing the moves and everything. So I feel like femininity and feminine privilege, it's really about magnetism. The masculine privilege or kind of this masculine personality, that's more about chasing. It's about chasing what you want, chasing it down and working and creating a to-do list and stuff like that. Feminine privilege has more to do with me magnetizing something. I'm kind of like, I'm naturally drawing it into myself. I'm attracting it. You know how they talk about the law of attraction or whatever? Okay, well, bitch, I attracted that shit by moving my body and looking cute at a fucking Bollywood class. That's my fucking law of attraction. My femininity is the fucking law of attraction. But another form of feminine privilege that I can think of is being emotionally warm. So, you know how some women, they're very like nurturing. And I'm not talking about wasting your nurturing energy on a Dusty. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about knowing how to nurture something. So, for example, I had to nurture myself in order to lose weight. I had to learn, okay, what vitamins do I need? What minerals do I need in my body? How does my body react to certain things? That's a form of nurturing myself. I feel like femininity, part of it is really learning how to nurture yourself emotionally, physically, spiritually, if you are spiritual. So instead of doing emotional labor for others and becoming an emotional mule, which is a spin off of masculinity, instead of me doing that, I am doing emotional labor for myself. So guess what? That means learning what issues I have. And by the way, nobody is perfectly feminine. That's another thing. I can't stand when women come online, they try to act like they're a perfect fucking feminine goddess. No, nobody is perfect. No one has a perfect life. No one has a perfect personality. Nobody is 100% enlightened and awakened and they're just more feminine than everybody and then they're going to sit here on their high horse and try to talk down on you. No. But I feel like part of being feminine and having that feminine privilege is knowing how to nurture myself. So guess what? That means calling out my own flaws. That means if I have an emotional flaw, like for example, attachment styles, that's coming into my head. Women with feminine privilege know how to have a secure attachment style. And I'm not just talking about to a man, I'm talking about being securely attached with your job. Because a lot of anxious women, for example, you think that she's just anxious with men? No, that woman is probably anxiously attached to food. She's anxiously attached to her mother, to her father. She's anxiously attached to her siblings. She's anxiously attached to her job. Because think about an anxiously attached person. That's a person who's really operating in their masculine. They're chasing things down. They're chasing approval. They're chasing validation. They need constant reassurance on everything. So an example that just popped up in my head is actually Anaya from Love Island. She's an example of someone anxiously attached, constantly having to chase this validation. Well, do you like me? Well, do you want me? Well, will you pick me? Well, am I good enough? That's the core of anxious attachment. And then the core of avoidantly attached women is the fear of rejection. I'm scared of not being picked. I'm scared of him rejecting me. I'm scared of being abandoned. I have a fear of success, a fear of a successful friendship, a fear of a successful business. So when I talk about anxious and avoidant attachment, I tend to look at it holistically. And by the way, that's one of my favorite parts of this channel. I love that we look at things holistically. I love that everything on our channels is not focused around what some bitch ass man wants. No, when it comes to being avoidantly attached or anxiously attached, some women are avoidantly attached to success. Anytime she gets a little bit of success, she runs away. She sabotages it. Just like an avoidantly attached person would. She takes it for granted. She gets that promotion at work. She's taking it for granted. She's sabotaging it. She's fucking everything up. She has imposter syndrome. I think that's what it's called. Imposter syndrome. That's really at the core of a lot of avoidant attachment. It's imposter syndrome. You're afraid of getting exposed one day. You're afraid of that person realizing, oh, well, you're just average. You're just, you're not good enough. So a lot of women, they've got avoidant attachment in terms of their jobs as well. And so that's actually a lack of feminine privilege because she didn't know how to nurture herself. She didn't get the help that she needed. She didn't get the therapy that she needed. She didn't, become her own therapist. Because I feel like some people, they can't afford therapy or whatever. They don't want to go to somebody else. So, okay, so then learn how to be your own therapist. Then learn how to fix your own emotional issues. And you're never going to be perfect. And that's okay. And you don't have to be perfect. But I think the first step for a lot of women is being aware of what those traits are and then nurturing themselves and healing. Nurturing is about healing somebody. It's about, giving them the care that they need, making them feel safe. A lot of women, they're only feminine for other people. They don't know how to be feminine and nurturing towards themselves. And that's why they're anxious. That's why they're fucking avoidant. That's why they have a fear of rejection. That's why they're defensive as fuck. That's why they have a resting bitch face because they didn't know how to nurture themselves. They were too busy looking for a man to nurture. Oh, well, let me just get this white man. That'll make me feel more feminine, just nurturing him. But another aspect of feminine privilege I've noticed is a woman who's feminine privileged, she seems to have a lot of social support. So you see this archetype in the media, kind of like the cheerleader, for example. She's got this friend group. She's got these friends who support her. I'm not talking about Mean Girls, because that's not an example. That's false femininity. Regina George or whatever. No. But like, think of the cheerleaders, think of the princess, think of the queen. Somebody she has this popularity about her. That's why I don't promote isolation. I don't promote prolonged isolation on this channel because I've talked about this before. You don't want to live your life in a prison. You don't want to just be trapped in your apartment. All you do is go to work, go to the gym, come home for the next 80 years. No, I want the Exoticals to have a community. That's part of why I made this channel, is so I can validate you. I'm validating you, you're validating me, we're validating each other. But I do want you guys to have your own communities in real life too. Because part of feminine privilege is that woman, she had social support. She had a network of friends, or maybe she had sisters that like helped her. She had a mother that was investing in her. And by the way, a lot of women who are used to emotional support, even if they do get into a relationship or they're dating or whatever, they tend to attract relationships where there is more emotional support. Have you ever noticed that it's always the isolated women? They're socially isolated, they have no emotional support. They tend to attract emotionally unsupportive men because that's what they're used to. A lot of people who come from broken backgrounds or whatever, if she's very masculine, if she's a super masculine woman or whatever, she does tend to attract more feminine men. So that's why you hear some women saying, oh, well, my boyfriend was DL, or like, I attracted all these mama's boys and stuff. And by the way, I am in no way victim blaming because, I think it's both. I think that some women are bad with their femininity, but I also think men in general tend to be dusty as well. So I'm not just completely blaming the woman here. But I have noticed, though, that women who have feminine privilege, they do get treated differently. They do. People, they tend to put more respect and admiration on you when you have a sense of feminine privilege because, again, you don't have the resting bitch face. You're not defensive in the same way that other women are. You're not over talking people 24/7. You're not arguing and shit with everybody, defending everything, bringing every conversation back to being a social justice warrior. All of that is more masculine behavior. Oh, I want to debate with you. That's that masculine shit. Let me debate with you. Let me try to win. Let me spar with you. No, that's let me go toe to toe and let's see who's stronger. Let's see who's mentally stronger. Let's see who's emotionally stronger. Let's see who has stronger talking points. So let's debate at the table. No. Notice how even on my channel, I don't go on other people's channels and try to debate with them. No, because that's a little bit too that's going into more of a masculine type of behavior. Let me go on their channel and try to embarrass them on their channel. Let me try to call into their live streams and then try to debate back and forth. No, because I don't have to do that. I can just magnetize my own audience by staying in my feminine, resting in my femininity or whatever. I don't have to chase anything. I can just magnetize that shit. But another aspect of feminine privilege, so there's the woman who has social support. So she's got the friends, she's got a community of people who support her. Oh, and by the way, that's part of why people get jealous of your social media. It's because social media, in their eyes, they feel like you have a sense of social support that they will never have. And I agree. Exoticals, we do have a lot of social support. Our image, we've got a collective image in the media that is associated with femininity already. And so that contributes to our feminine privilege. You've got all these exoticals who they become social media influencers and stuff. And so, they have followers, they've got subscribers, they've got a community. Any sort of community you build, that actually is a form of social support. So that's a privilege. It is a privilege because for a lot of women, they would kill to have people click on their shit. They can only get clicks by talking shit about you. They can only get clicks by talking shit about the feminine, pretty women. Nobody cares about them as a creator. They only care about the celebrities that they talk about. That's part of why on my channel, I never wanted this whole channel to be focused on other people. I always wanted to be able to develop my own talking points, my own unique talking points that come from me. It comes from my heart. And then people follow based on that. I'd rather have a smaller community that likes me or they like my heart. I get to open my heart up. I'd rather feel safe opening my heart on YouTube versus I always have to talk about somebody else. I always have to gossip about somebody else. I always have to spy on and monitor somebody else. Oh, well, what's the tea about this person and then that person? And then, oh my God, they broke up with so and so. I don't want to have to do that. And I feel like, that's actually a privilege. It's a privilege to be appreciated for who you are in your natural state, not just physically in your natural state, but also emotionally. That's a part of feminine privilege. Your personality, your natural personality is being appreciated. Your talents, your gifts, your intelligence, all of that is being appreciated without you having to try hard. Think about masculinity. It's very try hard. You have to try hard. You got to outshine somebody, you got to outdo them, you have to fight them, you have to hurt others. Because think about masculine culture throughout the years. It's usually men fighting against each other and like jousting and like wars and stuff like that. That's all created by the masculine. That's created by, toxic masculine traits. And so it's a big privilege. It's a huge feminine privilege if you're able to walk in the room and you light up that room. Your smile lights up that room, your warmth, your spirit, people get along with you, they love you. And by the way, nobody's ever going to perfectly, there's no such thing as you never have any haters at all. So obviously you're always going to have jealous people. But generally speaking, you should have the ability to at least walk into some rooms and to be celebrated. And thankfully, the Exoticals are already known for being celebrated. And some people try to say, like, oh, well, you're only celebrated in the Black community. Okay, well, if I had to choose, I'd rather be celebrated in the Black community than no community at all. So, and by the way, I don't think that Exoticals are only celebrated in the Black community, but I don't devalue Blackness like that to the point where I take that as an insult either. So it's like, okay, you still proved my point, though, that we are still celebrated. So that is absolutely a privilege. And I think that a part of what gives you the safety to cultivate your feminine privilege is being celebrated. You're celebrated. So guess what? You can wear the dress. You can do your nails. You can frolic in the flowers and like play the guitar and then like go gardening and like not meet the same stereotypes as others. You don't have to work as hard. You don't. You can rest a little bit more. You can have a little bit more luxury. Having free time is a luxury. Having free time is a luxury. Having access to money is a luxury. Getting resources is a luxury. And when I say resources, I'm talking about jobs. I'm talking about options, friendship options. So many people are obsessed with dating options. Oh, well, I have more dating options. Bitch, what about friendship options? Why does nobody like your ass? Why is it that everywhere you go, the dust follows? Why is it that you're always beefing with somebody, always fighting with somebody? Having options is not just about dating. Having options in terms of friendships, that is a huge advantage. Because guess what? Now you can cut off the toxic friendships without being afraid of making new friends. A lot of women, they're afraid of making new friends because, she's only ever been in toxic friendships. She's only ever been around toxic women. Or maybe she's masculine and hates women. She's got internalized misogyny. So she doesn't like women. She doesn't like feminine women. She doesn't like any woman that's not exactly like her. So any woman who's lighter than her, any woman with a different phenotype or a different race or a different nationality, she doesn't like those people. Everybody's her enemy. Okay, that sounds like some toxic masculine shit. You sound like a fucking dictator. You sound like a warlord. You're just beefing with everybody all over the world. You sound like you sound like Hitler. You literally sound like and act like Hitler, and then you expect me to believe that you have feminine privilege? No. And by the way, a part of the masculine Dustishas type of personality is that dictatorship. She's everywhere that she is, it has to be a dictatorship. She has to be the almighty leader. Okay, so literally you remind me of Hitler. You literally act like Kim Jong-un, and then you're over here trying to say that you have feminine privilege. No, you do not. Have you ever been around a woman where her attitude is like my way or the highway? It has to be my exact way. You have to agree with all of my talking points. That's another thing too. That's actually a form of like toxic masculine behavior. You have to agree with everything I say. You have to agree with all my talking points. Okay, so that is a dictatorship then. That's a dictatorship. You're basically acting like a warlord. You're like, "Oh, you must believe all the same things that I say. I am your almighty leader. I'm your freaking cult leader. I'm your political leader. I'm your cult leader." So, that comes from that masculine culture. Femininity, a woman with feminine privilege, she really doesn't care because, again, she's carefree. Carefree means you don't care. It means you're unbothered. So you don't care if somebody has a slightly different opinion or, maybe they like to dress differently than you. Maybe they have a different beauty standard than you. And that's another thing. Women who get offended by other women's beauty standards, you do not have feminine privilege. No, you don't. Because if you had feminine privilege, you would have an abundance mindset about beauty, and so you wouldn't be so like butthurt. So for example, some women, they like having a bigger booty. Okay, fine. I have a small booty, but I'm not offended like, "Oh my god, she said that she doesn't like small booties." No. As long as you are not down talking me or comparing and competing against my booty, then I don't have a problem. So some women who have this dictator comparing and competing, it's my way or the highway. I can't support anybody else because they don't have the exact same talking points as me. You'll see it on YouTube. How are you going to make femininity content? You don't even support other women. What are you talking about? You don't even support. Name 10 women whose YouTube channels you promoted on your channel. Over here talking about femininity and women's empowerment and sisterhood. You don't have a sisterhood with anybody. So again, that's more of a masculine type of trait. Everybody's my competition. I don't have a sisterhood with anyone. You view sisterhood as not valuable. You'd rather align with men versus aligning with women. Okay, it's because you're masculine. That's why. That's literally why. It's you align more with men because you are inherently more masculine. So anyone who truly is feminine and has feminine privilege, they would value femininity, obviously. So they're going to value other women and other women's femininity, and they're going to value other women's types of beauty, and it'll be fun. They'll be fun together, and they'll have fun. They'll have like a sisterhood. They're going to be more collaborative. Women with feminine privilege tend to be better at building communities, and they tend to be better at attracting protection, actually. You know that you have feminine privilege when people go out of their way to try to protect you. As a matter of fact, so I went to class yesterday, and after class, I was walking outside in the parking lot, and I parked my car kind of far away. It's a huge parking lot, so I parked kind of further back. And as I was walking, these guys, they were parked in the parking lot. They were like, "Hey, baby," just being obnoxious, whatever. And then I just kept walking. And then the guy's like, "Hey, come back over here." And as soon as a guy from my class, he saw that happening, he literally started walking up, basically trying to protect me. He walked up and walked next to me and walked me to my car. So that's an example of just naturally attracting protection. If I would have been the type of girl with a resting bitch face, or like I'm constantly defensive or whatever, then that scares people off, obviously, because nobody wants to be berated all the time. Nobody wants to be yelled at 24/7. Nobody likes that. That's not fun. It's I just want to have fun. This world is already so fucked up and messed up. So I just want to have fun. So no, I don't want to be yelled at all the time. I don't want to constantly talk about all this bullshit that happens. And it's like a lot of women who are more defensive, you're not going to attract people who are going to try to protect you anyway, because they feel like she's already defensive enough. She seems like she's the fucking expert at protecting herself, so why should I try to protect her? And by the way, who do you want to protect you? That's a good question to ask yourself when it comes to your feminine privilege. Do you want to be protected by your friends, by family members, by, I don't know, social media, by a certain system or institution? Do you want your job to be protected? Maybe you want to join a union or something. Those are all just random things that are popping up in my head. But feminine privilege is being able to attract protection. And I think a lot of women, they were jealous of the Exoticals because they feel like men protect us. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think that on the internet, yeah, I guess some men might defend us more than they would defend other women. But guess what? That's a part of my privilege. So, if people want to go out of their way to protect me, thank you. That's part of feminine privilege. You're the queen, baby. You're the queen. So you got the troops going out on your behalf. So guess what? I'm not a troop. I'm the fucking queen. I'm the fucking princess in the palace. And then the masculine troops are going out on my behalf. That's the epitome of feminine privilege. So notice how some women, they get jealous when you are being protected. Have you ever been at work and then maybe a jealous coworker is mad because your coworkers are protecting your reputation? Your friends are protecting your reputation. So she tried to do a smear campaign, and then people were actually defending you socially. And they're saying, no, actually, she's a nice person. I like her. Okay, that's feminine privilege. You're attracting protectors. Okay, I think I'm on number 10. Softness or wholesome privilege, kind of being perceived as soft and wholesome. I will never get mad if somebody calls me soft. I'd rather be called soft than be called hard. So saying things like, oh, Exoticals United, she's so soft. She don't scare nobody. Okay, that's good. I don't want to be a scary monster like you. I'm not scared of her. Good. I don't want you to be scared. I shouldn't have to invoke fear in other people in order to be respected. So thank you. Saying that I'm not scary, that's a compliment, because I don't want to be a scary ogre. I don't want to be a scary monster. I don't want to be this beast just walking around scaring people. I shouldn't have to use scare tactics in order to get respect. And by the way, you cannot bully your way into having status. You cannot scare people into thinking you're beautiful. Because that's something that I've noticed. That's a masculine type of thing. Again, that's masculine. You're trying to impose, you're trying to dominate and subjugate other people. You're trying to dominate and subjugate their opinions. Oh, shut up. Olandria's pretty. Okay, you're trying to subjugate them and like whip them into shape. You're trying to beat them into thinking somebody's pretty. That's not how beauty works. That's not how privilege works. But I feel like part of feminine privilege is when you're being viewed as wholesome and you're viewed as like soft, um, being viewed as being playful. That's a part of feminine privilege as well. People view you as playful. You know why? Because you're always smiling, you're always smirking, you're always laughing and giggling. You come off as happy. You don't allow like things to get you down. You don't have like this depressed energy about you, kind of like this suicidal type of energy that some masculine women have. Because think about it, who commits suicide more? It's men. That's a masculine, that's known in the masculine community. They commit the most suicide, and that's because a part of masculine culture is you're constantly on this hamster wheel, so much so to the point where you never measure up, and that causes a lot of them to want to self-delete. And so a lot of women, they're so entrenched in masculinity that they end up tipping over into self-deletion thoughts. So that's another aspect, that's an aspect of toxic masculinity. So part of femininity is you don't have this dark cloud hanging over you, because you got a healthy version of femininity. You value yourself. You spend time nurturing yourself. You spend time pampering yourself. And this is a decentered from men version of femininity. So you're not looking for male approval in order to make yourself feel feminine. But another aspect of feminine privilege is being perceived as having leisure, or kind of like, I don't know, having financial security, having free time, having emotional safety, being able to cultivate your creativity in a safe space, because stress that gets rid of your creativity, because all your creativity is being used up so you can solve your problems. So you cannot be in survival mode. Like, if you're in survival mode, you don't have as much time to be creative. You're not thinking about fucking writing songs and, like, putting on glittery nail polish and playing the guitar. No. Generally speaking, if somebody is extremely stressed out, if they're chronically stressed, all of their mental and emotional energy is being used on surviving. And then the same thing goes for women in dusty relationships. Dusty relationships cause chronic stress. So that's why a lot of those women, again, they're not able to be feminine, because they're spending all their energy spying on their cheating husband. They're spending all their energy trying to track his location and trying to reading all these books, trying to figure out how to please him in the bedroom to get him to stop cheating. She's taking on a second and third job because he doesn't want to have a job of his own. So I think having leisure and having free time and kind of like living this soft life, or being stereotyped as living a soft life, that's a part of your feminine privilege. And I think that's part of why some women get mad when you dress really cute, and then they get offended because they feel like your dress is inappropriate for like a daily, it's inappropriate to wear heels to work. Why are you overdressed? And it's like, well, it's because she has a soft life. She doesn't have to dress like a man. She doesn't have to dress like a fucking factory worker. She doesn't have to dress like a fucking slave on a cotton field in order to go into work. She has a soft life. So, yes, if she wants to wear heels, she can wear heels. She can wear a dress. She's comfortable in a dress. Just because you have a big ass bowling ball stomach hanging out, just because you're shaped like a fucking marshmallow, just because you're shaped like the abominable snowman, yeah, you don't feel comfortable in a dress, but she does. She's living a softer life. She doesn't have all these hard ass rolls and all this visceral fat just hanging off of her body, because she has more free time. She has the time to get her 10K steps. She has the time to cook and prepare those meals, or she has the money to pay for the meal prep service. She has the money to pay for the chef or to shop at a better store. And remember, when I'm talking about femininity, I'm talking about just feminine privilege. I'm not saying that you're not inherently feminine. Obviously, if you're a woman, you already have an inherent femininity about you. But femininity is also kind of a social construct, just like anything else. So people, they do put certain qualities on a pedestal, and people do tend to respect certain qualities. And I feel like the issue with a lot of YouTubers is when they talk about femininity, they seem to be trying to change you from the outside in, as opposed to changing from the inside out. And a lot of the content seems to be based on, oh, well, you're not feminine because you didn't get this dress. And it's like, okay, it's not just the dress. Like, a person can dress feminine. You could be strong in some areas of your femininity and then weak in other areas. I think that's also very common. You see a lot of women where they're very good at feminine dress, or they're very good at, like, I don't know, expressing their style and growing their hair and all that. But then when it comes to their facial expressions, their mannerisms, how they interact with other women, and then how they interact with men or their coworkers and stuff, that's when it's almost as if it gets canceled out in a way. It kind of neutralizes itself. And so I think there are certain cultures where their definition of femininity is just weaves and lashes and long nails. And I feel like feminine privilege is way more nuanced than that. Feminine privilege is really a form of social capital. So when I use that term social capital, what I mean is, like, you get invited to opportunities. So maybe you get invited to a lot of parties. Maybe you know about all the clubs. So, for example, when I was younger, I'll use college as an example again. I remember one of the girls who lived on my floor, she was jealous because I got invited to, like, certain parties. I mean, I didn't think it was a big deal, but I didn't realize at the time that part of your feminine privilege, and in my case, my feminine privilege was being friendly and being sweet and kind to everybody, and, like, always smiling at people and stuff. And so because of that, that's why I got invited to stuff. That's why people wanted to be around me. That's how I found out about all the clubs and the different internships and stuff. It's because people liked my personality. And it's very interesting because when you have feminine privilege, you're going to notice this dichotomy where masculine women hate you. Like women who hate femininity, they tend to really dislike you. They'll try to smear your name and stuff. But then everywhere else you go, you get celebrated. It's like, why is it that I'm celebrated everywhere else except for with these pick me beluga, like bottom bitches? Why is it everybody else is nice to me? Everybody else wants to invite me to stuff. Everybody else, they invite me to speak at certain things. They want to give me leadership positions. I've got all this social capital. And then suddenly when I'm around Dustishas, suddenly they think I'm weird and something's wrong with me and I smile too much. And they think that I must be sneaky. I must be sneaking and doing something mischievous because there's no way that you could have something to smile about. See, that's that masculine shit. You came from a gutter, that those types of women, they come from a background where the only reason for them to smile is if they dominated and subjugated someone else. So again, that's toxic masculinity. But I feel like part of the social capital you'll gain with feminine privilege is you get invited to more opportunities. So parties, networking events, people want to collaborate with you because they enjoy having you around. And I'm not talking about the male gaze, like, oh, are you a pleasure to be around? No, I'm talking about in general. You get a lot of non-romantic opportunities. So maybe your friends are introducing you to new people. You get a lot more referrals. So they recommend you for a job. They recommend you for a client. People trust your opinion more because they view you as sweet and wholesome. You're the wholesome one. You're the sweet girl. You're the kind one. You don't have the snarl or the bitch face. You don't look at other women crazy when you walk past them. You don't have like this hater type of vibe about you. So that it makes other people trust you a little bit more. And then for those of you who do care about dating, well, that does increase your opportunities because you're in more places. You're outside more. You're in more clubs, you have more activities, you have more places to go and things to do. And a lot of women, they're chronically online. And so they want to talk about privilege all day long, but then they never get the privilege because they never leave their house. They never leave their house. They never leave their apartments. They never leave their jobs. Their friends are just whoever works at their job. That's it. They don't have any hobbies. They don't have anything they do outside of the house. They're trapped in the house. They don't do any cooking classes, no language classes, no pickleball, no tennis, no golf, no running, nothing. So it's like, what's the point of talking about these privileges if you will never receive them? Remember, other people give you the privileges. So if you hate other people or if you give people a bitch face 24/7, if you're sizing other women up and looking them up and down and smacking your teeth when you walk past them, that's not going to get you any sort of privileges. So I think that women who are antisocial, being extremely antisocial, which gender is known for being more antisocial? That's men. So again, that's another masculine trait, being antisocial. Men in general, they do tend to be way more antisocial. They're much worse at creating communities because they view other men as their competition. So the women who are like, oh, I don't fuck with anybody, like, oh, I hate everybody, I'm a lone wolf. I don't recommend being a lone wolf 24/7 for the rest of your life. Because, especially if you're an exotical, there are other exoticals out there. There are so many people that admire you as an exotical. So you don't have to put on the same defenses as women who have inferiority complexes. Antisocial behavior, a lot of that comes from an inferiority complex or allowing other people to convince you that nobody's going to ever be there for you, that nobody loves you, nobody likes you. No, that's a fucking inferiority complex talking point. You'll never be able to convince me that nobody likes me. No, there are billions of people in this world. Somebody out there will vibe with me. Somebody out there will have fun with me. Somebody out there will want to be my friend. So I think that's another disadvantage of like the masculine Dustishas. She's antisocial, which is another, toxic masculine trait because everybody's her competition. But just using myself as an example of using feminine privilege and kind of like I guess you can say expanding my network. Well, the way I was able to do that, and also the way that I have so many fun stories to tell on YouTube and on Patreon, well, it's because I go outside. Okay, I go to hiking groups, doing hiking groups, doing soccer groups, doing sand volleyball, doing running groups, doing pickleball, going salsa dancing, creating this content, having a bunch of shared hobbies. All of those are different opportunities to find people that you get along with. And it's a good opportunity to nurture yourself, which, that helps your femininity. And it's going to make your body look better and get in shape. Playing all these sports and stuff, doing bike riding and all that. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.